Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. We're going through the background here as to how we got to this situation where the left is doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on some stupid things. This is from the same folks who brought you the one-liner that says silence is violence. They now have a hard time admitting that violence is violence when watching video, watching footage, watching coverage of what is happening in Los Angeles with these riots. These are not protests. I'm sure, listen, Los Angeles is a big place. I'm sure that there's a peaceful protest somewhere. But to act like these are mostly peaceful protests is to have one's head in the sand so deep that I don't even know what to say about that. These things are, they're numerous. They are out of control. They are clearly violent. And the left is excusing them, refusing to say that these are violent protests, violent riots, I should say, and doubling and quadrupling down, tripling, quadrupling down on just that position. And then blaming Trump for usurping his authority by going to the National Guard himself instead of at least consulting with Newsom. But again, from Trump's perspective, I've got a guy that has no interest in anything besides campaigning here. I watched how he handled the wildfires. I watched how everything this guy touches is a mess. I watched how this guy has created a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state, has built and developed the sanctuary state. He works with people that are running sanctuary cities. I mean, this guy's not interested in these people being deported. Have you seen the rap sheet for some of these folks that are being deported, by the way? Unbelievable stuff that we're dealing with. And again, the left will tell you silence is violence. I will tell you that I'm here today to make sure that I do not contribute to the violence by being silent. I'm going to tell you that what is happening there is absolutely atrocious, and we're going to get to the bottom here of why we're at this point. We've kind of laid a little bit of the groundwork last hour, but I want to lay more of it this hour to clearly articulate who's to blame here, and it is not Donald J. Trump. It's like we blame everybody except for those who are responsible for this chaos, this pandemonium, this bedlam, this insanity. So we're going to go through that today. I've got clips of other stuff. Sound bites might be to come as well. We will see how the program takes shape here as we move into the second hour of the program today. Before we do that, though, my friends, are you tired of spending your hard-earned money at businesses that turn around and support leftist causes? Are you tired? We've talked about left businesses that support the woke candidates or woke causes. What about businesses that support this type of behavior? Candidates that actually allow and excuse the violence that's happening in their city streets today. What about that? I mean, some businesses actually contribute to candidates like Gavin Newsom, like Karen Bass, like these others that are running it. You know what? In your own cities, in your own communities. Look down in, not too far from me, in Monroe County. County seat is Bloomington. It's run by a bunch of crazy leftists. I mean, they're the same way. They're on board with all these policies that are causing chaos in the streets of Los Angeles today. So you don't want to do business. I mean, listen, we don't want to fuel this fire by giving our money to businesses that are then going to take it and give it to these causes that are causing havoc on our nation. That's why we created Freedom Marketplace. It's a free, searchable directory of businesses that share your conservative values and ideas, your principles. These are businesses that have vowed not to support leftist candidates or leftist causes. Friends, there's no login required, no strings attached, just good, patriotic businesses pushing in the same direction as you. Check it out today, freedommarketplace.net. freedommarketplace.net, my friends, liberty and business for all. All right, so last segment, we were kind of laying the ground. At the end of last segment, we were laying some groundwork as to how we got here. They want you to believe that Trump's to blame. They want you to believe the presence of the National Guard in Los Angeles is to blame. The presence of the United States Marine Corps is to blame. 700 Marines, 4,000 Guard. Think about this. 4,000 Guardsmen and 700 Marines have been sent to Los Angeles. And the left is saying that's not necessary. Karen Bass acted as though they have it under control. They act as though they, the left, they, the Democrats, they, the Democrat governors who signed this stupid letter that I read at the end of the last hour. They want you to believe that, listen, this is all under control. Trump doesn't trust local law enforcement. Well, here's the thing. Trump doesn't trust those who are leading the communities, leading politically local law enforcement, number one. Number two, the size and scope of this is beyond what the law enforcement can manage. I mean, it doesn't take a long period of time of watching these videos and what's happening in Los Angeles for one to realize that the violence and the crime has gotten too much for the law enforcement. There's too much of it for them to manage. That's 100% what's happening. And so to hopefully bring an end to this, to make it harder to commit crimes and to make it harder for chaos and bedlam and pandemonium to take over the streets of Los Angeles, Trump has ordered these guardsmen and Marines to go. Now, why wouldn't Newsom do this? I stated earlier, California is a sanctuary state. So they've invested a whole lot in telling the people who live there, listen, we don't care where you're from. You're a Californian, right? You're one of us. If you're here illegally, we don't care. We welcome you. You've lived here peaceably. You've lived here for a long time. You're just trying to work and take care of your families. We got you covered. We're not going to cooperate with federal law enforcement or ICE or whoever who want to deport you. We're not going to do that. And so obviously more people who are illegal are going to be attracted to that type of environment because they don't want to be deported. So we've had presidents who have ignored federal law, refusing to really do anything about people. We had most presidents that didn't even do anything about the border. Most presidents didn't even try to make it less of a problem, illegal immigration in and of itself, more people coming in. Most presidents didn't do anything. Most Congresses couldn't agree on doing anything. They were happy to talk about this for a long time. One guy comes along and says this has been enough of a hurt on the American people that I'm going to stop it. First by building the wall, which Trump effectively has done. I mean, look, there's still places where the wall is necessary, but the bottom line, the wall was designed. The whole argument of build that wall was secure that border. And the border is now effectively secured. So now Trump says, and Homan says, we're going to deport the people. We're starting with the worst of the worst. But by the way, if you're here illegally, you can legally be deported. Period. Don't need Gavin Newsom's permission. Don't need Karen Bass's permission. We can go in and we can have operations where we're, have deportation raids and so forth in these cities, in these communities. That's what they've been doing. Now, on the other side of the equation, you've got the people that have created the problem, that have created a shelter, a sanctuary for people to go, where they don't have to deal with the enforcement of federal law, where they and their behavior and the crime that they've committed is covered up by the state, by the city. And percentage-wise, I don't know what the percentages are. I'm going to look this up. I meant to look that up during the break, but I didn't. But there's a large percentage of people who are in these cities and communities and states illegally. And so now, there's a lot of support. And then you get to the personal level. I saw one 19-year-old soccer player who I believe has gotten caught up in this. He wasn't one of the violent ones, but through the enforcement of federal law and going after the people who are the worst of the worst, he got caught up here. He's been detained, I think is being deported. And you have all of his teammates, right? Now, those teammates, he's a 19-year-old kid. These former high school teammates, I saw him talking about this somewhere. The coach was there. This is a good kid. He's one of the best soccer players I've ever coached. And listen, I can understand this on a personal level. You think, man, I don't want this kid, my friend, to be deported. He's not causing problems. He's not doing this or that. But again, my friends, you're here illegally, you can be deported. If you don't like the law, you better work on changing the law. You can't, yes, you can. You can complain that the administration is enforcing the law, but you can't say the administration is making up the law. In fact, what you can say is that previous administrations have made this problem infinitely worse because they refused to do anything about it. So along comes a guy in Donald Trump who says, I'm not going to stand for this anymore. We're going to regain control of our communities. We're going to secure our border. We're going to deport the people who are the worst of the worst. Anyone who's here illegally can be deported. We'll see as this continues to unfold, maybe some legislation that might come down the road. But right now, this is pretty cut and dry. They're deporting people, especially targeting those who have, connections with gang violence, with human trafficking, drug trafficking, criminal records. That's where they're starting. And it makes 100% sense, and everybody knows it. But see, you've got people leading these communities who have basically built a population of people who believe that they're entitled to do whatever it takes to prevent this enforcement of law. And so these people have taken to the streets, which, by the way, they can take to the streets. You can protest. What you can't do is interfere with the functions of law enforcement. You can't prevent them from doing their jobs. You certainly can't assault them. You certainly can't throw stuff at them. You certainly can't set their cruisers on fire or bust out windows, dance on windshields, that sort of thing. But that's precisely what is happening. And so Trump, after watching this chaos unfold without hesitating whatsoever, see, Trump's been through this before, right? I mean, we all remember the George Floyd riots. We all remember that. We all remember this back in, 2020. We all remember this. We've all experienced this. In fact, I would tell you to be prepared for something like this. We all had this happen. Many of us had this happen in cities near us. In fact, the city of Indianapolis. I don't know that my wife won't go there anymore, downtown. Downtown Indianapolis looked like, on the circle, in that near area, it looked like you could say a war zone after the Black Lives Matter riots in 2020. I remember going to the State House. I gave was speaking there, and I walked downtown. This must have been in 2020. It might have been in 2021. But I walked downtown to go to eat lunch, and the number of businesses that were completely covered, head to toe, if you will, in plywood was a lot. In fact, the place I was looking to go, I assumed it was closed because it was 100% covered with plywood. And then I saw the door open, and I went in, and I said, "You're open?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "My goodness, you can't tell that from the outside." "Yeah, we've had some problems here." And I looked around the restaurant, and the walls were bare. And I said, "What happened to all the stuff?" "Well, the rioters came and took all the stuff. They took televisions, or they took items that were hanging on the wall. The walls were bare. And it was easier to just not replace it because who knows what's happening next." Prepare for that very same thing to happen again. Prepare for that very same thing to happen again in a city near you, my friends. But this is the environment that has been created by lawlessness. And the lawlessness is not on the side of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, although I would say the Republican Party has been complicit in this problem for years for not fixing it when they had the opportunity to do so. But Trump is actually trying to fix this. He's made great strides in fixing this. But here we go. This is the problem. And now violence begins to erupt. Trump says, we're not having a repeat of that. You clearly can't control what's happening in your city streets. Here's 2,000 National Guardsmen. Then the left and the media freak out. Oh my goodness, Trump's trying to cause World War III in our cities by sending people not to go around. See, they want you to think, I guess, that they're sending in the National Guard to go house to house just shooting people. Is that what they want you to believe? I don't know what they want you to believe. But I do know if there's chaos and you're trying to regain control of a city, sending in the Guard to protect protect buildings and that sort of thing, to keep the violence from spreading to other parts of the city as much as possible. Those are good things. So Trump sends 2,000 in. That's not enough. It's still not under control. So he sends another 2,000. They send in 700 Marines. Instead of being upset and blaming the people that need to be blamed, which are the rioters, which are the folks who stir the pot, the folks who are encouraging riots and brouhahas to erupt around the city, those folks are not held accountable. They're not blamed. Instead, Trump is blamed. Trump is blamed. Imagine blaming the people who are trying to keep the peace for the problem and not blaming the people who cause the disruption, the people who cause the chaos. It's gotten so bad that the Democrats, in particular, Gavin Newsom, has come out and said, arrest me. He's basically challenging what's happening. I've got a series of clips a couple of clips I want to play here. This is Karen Bass on CNN. This was on Sunday, I believe, the 8th. She's being asked on CNN what's happening in Los Angeles, as there's B-roll footage of showing pure pandemonium and all kinds of chaos. She's insisting that they don't need the National Guard.
Well, LAPD, as you just noted, declared some of these gatherings unlawful assembly. Is that something you were made aware of before they did that? Did you okay that?
Yes, I didn't okay it. I don't run the police department. The chief does, but I was aware of it. And what I was told is that the protesters had begun throwing things. So to me, it is most important that everybody be allowed to exercise their First Amendment right, but it absolutely has to be done peacefully.
No kidding.
Now, with federal troops on the ground, we do not need to have our city under siege. I remember the last time federal troops were on the ground here, and it was in 1992 when there was massive civil unrest. Nothing like that is happening here, so there is no need for there to be federal troops on our ground right now.
And Mayor,
That's what she's saying. We don't need federal troops. This isn't like 1992. I'm not saying that we've reached that level. I candidly don't know. I'm familiar with 1992 and what happened in your city, Mayor Bass. But to say that there's no civil unrest happening in your city is absolutely preposterous. To blame Trump for sending in the National Guard is crazy. I read this tweet or this post on X yesterday. Gavin Newsom, the federal government, is taking over the California National Guard and deploying 2,000 soldiers in Los Angeles, not because there is a shortage of law enforcement, but because they want a spectacle. That's his conclusion here. They want a spectacle. They're not the ones setting fires, Mr. Newsom. They're not the ones that are closing down the freeways. They're not the ones who are throwing objects at vehicles. They're not the ones that are looting stores. That's not, who's doing that? Governor Newsom, can you figure out who the folks who are that are actually doing that stuff? Because they would be the problem, you see. They would be the problem. He tells the people, anyone who would listen, this was on Saturday, the 7th, don't give them one, referencing a spectacle. He's telling folks, don't give them a spectacle, never use violence, speak out peacefully. Fine, I'm glad that they speak out. Well, I wish that they would speak out peacefully, but they don't. But they haven't. Trump takes to truth and says, great job by the National Guard in Los Angeles after 2 days of violence, clashes, and unrest. We have an incompetent governor, new scum is what Trump says, and Mayor Bass, who were, as usual, just look at how they handled the fires, and now they're very slow permitting disaster. Federal permitting is complete, unable to handle the task. These radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. Also, from now on, masks will not be allowed, which, by the way, is a common sense thing. Common sense thing to say masks should not be allowed at protests. Masks became in vogue, of course, after COVID. What do these people have to hide and why? Again, thank you to the National Guard for a job well done. By the way, I'm looking here. This is a post. I'm looking here at a series of posts at lifezet.com, which is in the stack of stuff today. Bongino says we're not slowing down. Pete Hegseth says it's deranged and he had a bit of back and forth with Gavin Newsom. Once Gavin Newsom said it was deranged to call up active duty Marines to go into the city of Los Angeles on American soil against its own citizens, which again paints the picture that we're going in and conducting an operation where we're trying to, I guess, kill and capture ISIS terrorists. That's not what's happening. They're trying to restore order to the city. They're not going in and targeting someone in your city. In fact, Hegseth said it's deranged is allowing your city to burn and law enforcement to be attacked. There's plenty of room for peaceful protests, but zero tolerance for attacking federal agents who are doing their job, the National Guard and Marines, if need be, stand by ICE. Yes, this is precisely the case. It's been declared. The police finally came along and said, look, this is a, what's the word that they use? An unlawful assembly. This is no longer a peaceful protest. So that's proof in and of itself. That's at least evidence that this has gotten well beyond this concept of a peaceful protest. Having the slightest bit of curiosity and objectivity will lead anyone to that conclusion. I have to take a break here, my friends. Quick timeout. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I had a couple of times raised the question of what percentage of people in Los Angeles were illegal immigrants. And from what I can tell, based on reporting from the Economic Times, based on an AI summary, it appears that just south of 1 million people, between 800,000 and 900,000 people, are illegal aliens in Los Angeles County. That's what this says. That's as of 2021. And again, if you believe the numbers, who knows? With that, we could be talking about 1 million people. We could be talking about a bigger number than that, based upon the reality that these numbers are usually grossly underestimated. But anyway, that is that's what the numbers show. So I mentioned that earlier. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people, and a lot of people know. A lot of people, obviously, if there's 1 million, they know a lot of people who are there illegally. And so this is a highly emotional situation. I understand it, but I also understand the law, and I understand who's gotten us here. It's the people who have ignored the law and who have protected people from actually facing enforcement of the law. They've not changed the law. They've simply tried to block the enforcement of the law. I want to continue talking about this here today. This this segment. Before I do that, friends, let me remind you, Red, White, and Brand is here to help you put your logo on almost anything. This can be t-shirts, this can be polos, this can be signage, this can be trade show booths, this can be promotional products, this can be awards. There's a whole bunch of things, my friends. If you think about what you can put a logo on that Red, White, and Brand can help you with, you can go to their website to get some ideas, to search to see what's possible, and then, of course, contact Red, White, and Brand to find out what's even possible beyond what you might find on their website, redwhiteandbrand.com. By the way, we own that here. I talk about they, but Red, White, and Brand is something that we own, and we will be happy to put something together for you if you're looking to have your logo on anything or your message. It could be a church, it could be VBS t-shirt, that could be any number of things. You get a 10% discount, my friends, with promo code Todd. And you get free shipping on online orders placed through the website, redwhiteandbrand.com. Promo code Todd saves you 10%. Red, White, and Brand. Promo code Todd. Your logo, my friends, on almost anything. All right. So, lots to still unpack here. But it's clear who the culprits are. It's clear who the problem is. The problem are those people who have been blocking the government from enforcing the law. And now they've been encouraged. Others have been encouraged because of their political leaders. I mean, this goes back. This goes back to earlier in the campaign. I mean, you remember was it the mayor of Denver? I think it was the mayor of Denver who basically said, again, I'm paraphrasing, this has come from the lips of so many Democrat elected officials. But they basically have said, look, I'm not going to allow ICE to deport people in my community. I'm going to stop it from happening. And then Tom Homan comes out usually and says, if you do that, you're in violation of federal law and you will be arrested. A variation of that happened with Governor Gavin Newsom. He's basically said to Tom Homan, arrest me, Tom. I'm going to stand out here and I'm going to, defend these folks in my community. Arrest me. And in fact, I want to play it. It took me a second to find this. Headline here at lifezet.com says, what's it say here? Tom Homan doesn't hold back when asked about Gavin Newsom's recent comments. So Gavin Newsom has basically said, hey, think you're a tough guy, come and arrest me, Tom. This is what Tom Homan, Borders Czar, had to say during an interview with NBC News about Gavin Newsom.
I'd love to get your response to Governor Newsom saying, essentially, that your actions here are provocative, and the quote that he used was sowing chaos.
Governor Newsom's an embarrassment for the state.
That's right.
He's the one that's feeding this mantra. He supports sanctuary cities. He supports sanctuary laws. If he cared about public safety in the state of California, he would not have a sanctuary for criminals, where criminals get released to the streets of this state every day because of his policy.
That's right. Citizens get released to the streets of this state every day because of Gavin Newsom's policies, because of the policies of his state, because of the policies of the administration, because of what's happening, in these states that are run by leftists. They've turned a blind eye to this. They don't care. There's no amount of violence. It's going to be interesting. If they can pin the violence on the National Guard, the Marine Corps, law enforcement, and of course, by extension, Trump, they'll happily say this is the most violent day in history. But if they can't blame it on the violence on Trump and the National Guard and all that, they're not going to admit to any of this, even though we see pictures of fires in the city. They're not going to admit to this. We have to accept this. That they have completely abandoned any attempt at being logical They've abandoned any attempt at being reasonable and rational. They will deny it. They've learned along the way. They've learned along the way that what you do is you just deny everything. You don't even when there's an accusation against you, you don't even give it the slightest bit of crack, the slightest bit of opportunity to penetrate the crack, the chink in the armor, and take root. They say, no, you just deny it. It's easier to deny it because at some point you're going to have to deny something along the way to protect yourself. So just deny it at the very beginning. And if it becomes so obvious that you can no longer deny it, you don't necessarily have to accept it as truth, but you continue to deny. You dig in at the furthest point, the closest point that you can to I guess to give yourself the most room from the truth. You don't want to admit any of these things. You dig in, you fight tooth and nail. You don't give up one iota of ground. Now, what's interesting here, I want to shift gears just ever so slightly. I don't know if you've seen this. This is, I'm dumbfounded when I saw this. Minnesota legislator admits she's an illegal immigrant and she just invited a world of problems. This is at redstate.com. You might have seen this any number of places. I've seen this making the rounds on social media. This was just yesterday. Minnesota State Representative appears that she is admitting that she's here illegally. Representative Kyoli Vang Her, forgive me if I mispronounced that, said that her father committed fraud, reading here from the article at redstate.com, on immigration documents, and that she is, quote, illegal in this country. This is unbelievable, but this is from the floor of the State House at the Minnesota House of Representatives yesterday, Monday, June 9th. Listen to this craziness.
His mother had died. My father, as the one processing the paperwork, put my grandmother down as his mother. And so I am illegal in this country. My parents are illegal here in this country.
Now, she goes on and on about this. She talks about this at length, but she just admits that she's here illegally in this country. I mean, is this not an invitation for Tom Homan and for ICE to now show up in Minnesota? It's just unbelievable. They think that they're virtue. It's crazy. Listen, I remember years ago, my brother had become friends with someone who was trying to, become a legal citizen of this great country. And I remember watching and seeing how difficult and time-consuming and challenging it is. And listen, I absolutely understand that, and I think maybe, I don't know, but I'd like to see maybe it not be quite as arduous and difficult. But at the same time, you just don't want to accept anybody into the country, so it shouldn't just be a go down and sign your name somewhere. I mean, there's a lot more going on here. But if you're here illegally and you're a member, think about this. She's an elected representative. She's here illegally. What the world is going on? I mean, and they tell us that this isn't that big of a problem. They told us when Biden was president that illegal immigration was really, was not that big of a deal. We were told that people who come into this country illegally are less likely to commit crimes than people who are born here. All this stuff. And now we've got people who are elected officials that are not even supposed to be in the country. I just can't believe. I can't believe where we are, my friends. Quick time out. Back here in a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Last segment of today's program. I've alluded to this little, back and forth between Newsom and the administration. Newsom basically said, hey, come and arrest me. Get it over with, tough guy. Come get me. And what's interesting is, if you remember, that letter signed by Newsom and the other Democrat governors said that Trump was the one who wanted the spectacle. Arresting Newsom would, of course, be a spectacle. Now, There are certainly things that Newsom could do if he was directly interfering where he should be arrested. As crazy as that might sound, my friends, you can't interfere with ICE operations. Of course, that should be avoided at all costs. That's not the purpose of this. Trump was asked about this. I have that soundbite. I just don't have it queued up here. I don't have the time. But Trump said, maybe he should. Gavin Newsom's a terrible governor. You know how Trump is. But Homan was asked about this on Fox. I don't know if it was on Hannity or where he was. But here's what Tom Homan, border czar, has to say about Gavin Newsom's taunt about arresting him.
So there was no discussion about arresting Newsom. And so, what he's done, he's failed that state. He waited 2 days of that city burning and people getting hurt, officers being assaulted before he made any declaration of an unlawful assembly. He's late to the game. President Trump isn't late to the game. Men and women of ICE are not late to the game. And let's make this clear. ICE took a lot of bad people off the street that day. We arrested a sexual predator, we arrested gang members, we arrested somebody that had an armed robbery conviction. So we made LA safer. The men and women of ICE, the men and women of the Border Patrol made LA safer that day. But you're not hearing any of this. All you hear is a rhetoric about ICE being racist and ICE being Nazis and terrorists. And Governor Newsom feeds that.
That's right. Governor Newsom does feed that. Governor Newsom is the one here who wants the spectacle. I would maintain that Governor Newsom sees this as a way to kick off his campaign. Now, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me to think about this, to think that this is this sort of behavior is acceptable and appealing to certain people. I don't see any reasonable person that finds what's happening in Los Angeles to be from the side of those defending illegal immigrants. I don't see how that's appealing enough to put together a coalition of people to vote for a candidate. It's just truly remarkable to me. You've seen the old clips of Hillary. In fact, I see one right here where Hillary, back during her campaign in I don't know if this was 2016 or when she was running in 2008. But a lot of what Trump is doing, this used to be popular. This used to be popular for Democrats even to say, if you're here in this country illegally, you should be you should have to pay a fine at least, or some such thing, right? You should potentially be deported. That used to be said by the Democrats. Now they're doubling down on absolute lawlessness. And candidly, that's how I view the situation. The left has become completely and utterly engulfed in lawlessness. It's absolutely positively lawlessness that they are engaged in. Listen, the law is simple. The law is if you're here illegally, you should be deported. If you can't prove that you are a citizen, that you belong here legally, whether that's a legal visitor, whatever, some sort of visa status, then you are to be deported. That is your due process, by the way. You don't have to go through a criminal trial. That's different altogether. And what's interesting is, listen, it's most Democrats are on the side of allowing this lawlessness, but they're elected officials. I think rank and file, the people, I'm still hopeful that there's a sizable chunk of rank and file Democrats that know that this is crazy to defend people who are breaking immigration law, especially those who have a rap sheet or who have a history of violence or who are associated with gangs and drugs and human trafficking, all this stuff, drug trafficking, gun violence, physical assault, all those sorts of things. But there is, again, a couple, not many, But there are a couple of people that will actually speak up. John Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman is one of them. He's headline here at foxnews.com. Fetterman calls out, quote, anarchy in Los Angeles, noting that Democrats forfeit the moral high ground by failing to decry the violence. That's where we started today. That's where we'll end today. And he's right. He posted this on X, calling this behavior out. We've heard, I played at the very, very beginning of the first hour, a series of sound bites, a montage put together by, I want to say it was by hotair.com, a montage that was put together of people in the media and in the Democrat Party who were calling these protests mostly peaceful, refusing to say that they're violence. Fetterman says, look, I unapologetically stand for free speech, peaceful demonstrations, and immigration, but this is not that. This is anarchy and true chaos. My party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, destroying buildings, and assaulting law enforcement. And I've got to go, my friends. SDG.